2 weeks today, it will be legal to smoke marijuana recreationally right here in Canada. And it opens up lots of discussions when it comes to employers and employees and marijuana in the workplace. And right now, we are joined this morning by Alex Lucifero, Managing Associate at Samfiru Tumarkin LLP. Thank you so much for coming by, big man.
Thanks for having me, Henry.
Well, I mean, the world's about to change. And I know here in 2 weeks, lots of questions are going to be asked about marijuana being allowed in workplaces. But it was recently passed that the Ontario government mentioned the fact that smoking marijuana is allowed in public places as well. Now, how is this policy going to result as far as when it comes to workplaces and smoking marijuana? Is that going to be allowed as well, just as it is with, with other things like when smoking cigarettes and such?
Yeah, I think our governments, both federal and provincial, have their wires crossed a little bit here.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly as far as the legislation goes, it's very clear that employees and the public in general are not allowed to smoke marijuana or consume marijuana in public places. That includes the workplace. So, the law is always very nuanced and multifaceted when it comes to any area of employment law, but specifically marijuana in the workplace. But there are some general rules that I think we could provide employees in these kinds of situations. And the first one is be cautious with this issue of consuming marijuana in the workplace or prior to the workplace. We've spoken to lots of employers already in anticipation of October 17th. They are bullish, Henry. They are very, very concerned about this. And so my first tip to employees is be careful, make sure you get the right advice or speak with an employment lawyer before you even think, and even if it's medical marijuana, before you think of consuming marijuana in the workplace.
Well, that's what I was thinking, that for an employee standpoint, it's probably good to have that discussion with your employer because, I mean, you see Air Canada, the Calgary Police, they're both passing mandates saying no cannabis at all, especially when it comes to Air Canada with those important positions, the high stress positions, the critical positions. Is this even allowed for employers to tell employees nothing at all, especially when it comes to what's going to be a legal substance?
Yeah, there's going to be a line here that employers are going to try and push towards. We see the Calgary Police as one example, where they're mandating their employees, their inactive police officers, to not consume marijuana even at home. Now, there are some caveats there because they refer to those employees being on standby. So there's the potential there that they could get called in to work. And therefore, they should abstain from consuming marijuana. The same thing should apply to alcohol.
Right.
And so I think that's something that makes sense. However, the line is crossed when an employer tries to dictate what an employee can do at home and not being on call or not being on standby. I think at that point, you reach a stage where you're infringing on an employee's privacy in the home, and I think that's a problem.
So have you heard a lot of employers right now, because again, we're 2 weeks away from October 17th and things are going to change. Are a lot of employers, companies, taking the approach of creating the mandates, the policies, addressing the employees ahead of that date because it's important that everybody's on the same page? Wouldn't you think that's the important way to approach this?
That is certainly the right way to approach it, and if an employer does not approach it that way, they're asking for trouble effectively, and they're going to be solving problems kind of as they go, and that might lead to difficult situations. What I'll say with respect to those employees that you mentioned, for example, Air Canada pilots, mechanics, etc., those are safety-sensitive positions, and so the law is going to operate differently there. The employer can probably ask more of an employee in that kind of situation to abstain from consuming marijuana. I think actually the Canadian military got it right in the sense that they have an 8-hour time limit to say, hey, 8 hours before you attend at work, you cannot consume marijuana for most military personnel, and there's some exceptions. I think that's the right approach. I think the Calgary Police might be extending their reach a little too far, and credit to the Ottawa Police as well. I think they've got it right as well as far as their policy.
Well, I think one thing you mentioned there as far as how different people are approaching, how different employers, different companies, different outfits like the military, the RCMP, how everybody's approaching, they're given different mandates as far as to their employees, because here with the Ottawa Police, we heard the Ottawa Police Chief mention fit for duty. Now, I guess for creating this clarity as far as with the employees and the employer is super important, especially when it comes to employees, because they need to find out what the actual policy is when it comes to marijuana at the workplace. Is that correct?
That's right, and an employee has to know the test that they have to meet to make sure that they are ready for work. And listen, for employees, I would treat marijuana the same way I treat alcohol, which is, a reasonable employee would not show up to work having consumed alcoholic beverages or being, tipsy at all or intoxicated, certainly. And so treat marijuana the same way. The difficulty we run into there is that we don't yet know the full effects of marijuana, we need a little more research and scientific study in that respect. And so this is, to a certain extent, new territory.
Well, Alex Lucifero from Samfiru Tumarkin, thank you so much for coming by. Lots of
pleasure,
questions
Henry.
to be answered with 2 weeks left to go, and I'm pretty sure for employers, there's lots of pressure on them right now.
It's certainly
to
an
create some
interesting time for
clarity.
everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much for all the insight.
Pleasure.